Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. It's 5:30 p.m. and we are in a special meeting of the Cupertino City Council prior to our regular meeting, which will be at 6:45. In the special meeting tonight, we have a study session on the Lawrence-Mitty, or at least what is designated right now as the Lawrence-Mitty Park expansion for Cupertino, which we recently annexed into the city of Cupertino. So all thanks to our staff for getting that job done. We'll start tonight with our acting city manager, Diane Thompson. Diane, would you like to introduce the presenter for this item on our special meeting?
Mayor, would you like roll call?
Diane, before we do that, I have been reminded very rightly by our most capable city clerk, Kirsten Squarsha, that we should be taking roll call. So thank you very much for that. And Kirsten, please take that roll call.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Way?
Here.
Councilmember Willie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Here.
Mayor Paul?
Here. Thanks very much, Madam City Clerk. Okay, Diane, please take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Council. I'd like to introduce Matt Morley, our Director of Public Works, and he'll start this item and introduce the project manager for this project. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here, and this is an exciting project and one that we're really looking forward to bringing along. I think we've got a great plan for you tonight. Lisa Camelli is our project manager, and she'll provide the presentation for us tonight in conjunction with our consultant, MIG. And with that, I'll turn it right over to Lisa.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Lisa Camelli, and I'm a project manager in the CIP program. Presenting with me tonight are two project team members with MIG Consulting. Jan Island is MIG's lead project manager, and Myrna Ortiz is MIG's public outreach specialist. We're here tonight to discuss the proposed park at the Lawrence-Mitty site. We'll be presenting our findings related to the public outreach process and the environmental site investigations we've conducted for the project. Next slide. For tonight's agenda, we'll cover the following topics. We'll give you a brief overview of the site and discuss our findings related to the site-specific opportunities and challenges. We'll provide you a summary of the community engagement process and what we've heard from the community to date. We'll discuss what we've heard from the Joint Commission and focus in on a few key elements of the design that we'd like to gain your input on. And then we're glad to take your comments and questions. Next slide. Now I'll pass the presentation over to Jan to provide you with the site overview. Jan?
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I'll make the site overview brief, as I know most of you have been out to the site and a lot of background information has been shared in the packet tonight. But first I'll show you the site here. You can see it's pretty long. It's a half-mile long, situated between Saratoga Creek on the west side and the Lawrence Expressway on the east side, with 280 just to the north, which is shown here on this slide on the right side of the image. So that's north to the right. And the south half of our site contains the existing trail, the Saratoga Creek Trail, and also some key existing bike and pedestrian connections to the east and the west. And the next section of our site is the larger open space area, which is currently fenced off. And this was the former construction staging area. And this part of the site offers really the most open space and the most opportunity for new recreation. And then at the north end, the site really narrows down and the creek becomes channelized. And our property actually ends right before Calvert Drive and the 280 freeway. And so far, our team has analyzed the site in terms of each of the key areas you see here on the slide. And that detail was included in an environmental summary report, which was shared tonight. And that culminated at the end of it with some detailed maps on site opportunities and site constraints. And those were made to help guide what possibilities really make sense for this particular site, given what we have to work with. And this next diagram kind of simplifies that into a quick graphic summary. And you can see on the upper diagram, the opportunities include existing bike and pedestrian connections, some existing sound walls at either end of the long site, open space areas for recreation opportunities, which you can see in purple, and of course the creek, which offers the community mature trees to work with for shade, some nice views that can be opened up, and a chance for them to connect with nature. And then you can see on the bottom half of the slide the challenges, which are the lack of vehicle access and the lack of sound barrier on most of the site. And in terms of soil, we have higher lead levels along the expressway edge. We have impervious surface at the main open space area where the staging site was. And then we have some soil piles and soil berms along the creek top edges that are currently limiting the visibility and access to the creek. So in addition to this site analysis, we've been working with the community to really understand their vision and their priorities for the site, so we make sure that it works for them. And to tell you more about what we've heard from them, I'll pass it on to Myrna Ortiz. She's our lead on community engagement from MIG.
Great. Thank you, Jen, and thank you everyone for having us tonight. I'll be giving you an overview of the community engagement that we've done to this point and sharing some of the feedback that we heard from the community. Over the last couple of months, we've engaged residents across different activities and events, some in partnership with the city and other community partners in pop-up events, as well as an online virtual community meeting where we were able to share some of the background site information with residents. And we also hosted a site tour at the actual park site location, allowing residents to come visit and experience the location firsthand. And we were excited to meet some of you there as well. Let's go to the next slide. We were also able to host an online survey where we heard from over 560 responses, most of them residents. About 50% of those who responded live within half a mile of the site, so they're familiar with the trail and the current space that's available. And over 80% of them were residents from Cupertino. So we were excited to hear from people that are really engaged and eager to see this site come to fruition. Next slide. So a summary of some of the input that we heard from residents across all the engagements and the online survey. The top community comfort features that they wanted to see included shaded areas, both for walking and seating throughout the site, walking paths that are different from the current trail that's shared with bikers, and amenities like restrooms to increase their comfort while they're visiting the park. Next slide. We also heard their feedback around recreation features that they'd like to see in the space, including nature play, so allowing children to play safely and experience the nature as they enjoy climbing things, and possibly having fitness equipment throughout the site and along the trail. So not only for children, but also for adults to be able to use. And then in their feedback around wildlife and nature or education features, again, people want to have access to the environment through nature trails, have more native plants that enhance wildlife, and have opportunities to look over the creek and be able to connect or engage with nature and learn from it as well. Next slide. So here we have a summary of the input that we heard from residents. And as Jan mentioned, you got a full summary, more details of both the online survey and the engagement that you can look over if you'd like. But some of the things that we heard that I haven't already mentioned include having flexible lawn space, a place to enjoy, hang out or enjoy the sun, extended bike trail, so extending the current trail, but also having a possible connection to the north. Walking trails, again, separate from the one that is currently shared with bikers. And then considering reducing the noise levels by extending the sound wall, or finding other ways for people to be more comfortable in that space since it is right next to a large roadway. We've also received mixed input around the access of dogs on site. We heard both from people that want to support dogs being off leash in certain areas of the location, and then others who express concerns around safety and wanting dogs to stay on leash. But in general, people were really excited. Residents want to see this park come to their community. Many residents shared that they've been in the neighborhood for a long time. They know the trail, they use it often, and they're really eager to see the extension with the rest of the park being transformed. So we're glad to share this input with you today.
Great, thanks, Myrna. So now I'm going to share a little bit more about where we're headed and get your feedback soon. So here's where we are in the process. We've gathered the community's vision for the site. We've studied the site, and we recently presented how far we've come so far with Joint Commission. Got feedback from them. That group included three commissions: Park and Rec, Bike and Ped, and Planning Commissions. And we'll share their input with you next. And then we want to hear comments from City Council about what you think about where we're headed so far. So then after tonight, our next step will be to synthesize all of this into 3 concept alternatives that we'll then bring back to the community, to the Joint Commission, and to the City Council again for more feedback. So then we'll hone in on what that final concept plan is that really speaks to the community and addresses their recreation needs. And we'll come up with that final concept plan. From the Joint Commission, what we heard was that the connection to the north is an important goal. And they brought up the possibility of purchasing an available property along the creek to make a smaller loop within the Rancho Rinconada neighborhood. They advised us to carefully consider the location of the restroom along with overall site safety, lighting, and visibility. They brought up the idea of widening the existing pedestrian bridge to accommodate more traffic. That might be a long-term goal. That was something that was discussed at length. They advised us to manage the noise levels, manage the soils with elevated lead along the roadway, and keep the existing trees, the native plants, and wildlife top of mind while we're continuing. And lastly, to listen to the community's input on the recreation features. And we've done some thinking since the commission on our approach of how to move forward. And these are the key topics here that we want to review with you tonight and receive feedback on. The first topic is access and parking. With the site situated between the expressway and the creek, it's not really possible for us to add new parking on site. So the proposed recreation features will need to align with that limitation and really be geared towards bikes and pedestrians. We'll also need to keep the 2 maintenance points that are existing and review the configuration of those for emergency access to make sure that it's current with what the needs are. Next, we understand that the community wants the trail to connect to the north, and we also understand that this connection is outside of our project site and will require long-term work with BTA and the neighboring cities. So our main goal is to add park space to the east side of Cupertino, and we don't want this extension to slow that down. So we have a proposal that we create a park space that ends at the northern edge of the large open space right now, and that the design also allows for this space for that north connection to happen. And then long-term, the city can explore purchasing a property along the creek if that becomes available, and also keep working to extend the trail to the north to create a Calvert Drive or a Stevens Creek Boulevard larger loop. So we'll be working kind of on 2 fronts on that. And next topic is the site soils. The soils were sampled by Cornerstone Earth Group, and they provided an assessment and development options for each category that you see on the slide here. First, the soils along the edge of the expressway do have elevated lead levels, and that's from gasoline exhaust from the past when gas contained lead. And that's right along the 20-foot strip right next to the expressway. And they've told us there's not a requirement to remove the soil, and there's several ways to deal with that. So what we're thinking is that the most reasonable place for the bike trail would be to be closer to the expressway anyways, to allow more of the nature activities closer to the creek. So our proposal would be to cap that area closest to the roadway. So bringing in some fresh soil and then having the trail over that, since we're going to be, covering that surface anyway, we're trying to be efficient by doing it that way. And then there's also some soil piles in the open space area. Those don't have any environmental concerns beyond just removing some large concrete chunks that were left over from the staging days. So that's actually an opportunity. We can take out the concrete and then we can use that on site for any kind of grading we want to do, which would be perfect for doing the 2 feet of cover along the expressway edge. And then same thing for the soil berms along the top of the creek bank. Those were pushed up during the staging days. Extra room was needed and was just pushed up against the creek bank. Right now, there's some mature trees growing in that soil berm. So we plan to remove a great deal of the berm, and there might be a few places where we need to leave it where there's some very mature tree roots. There's also the possibility of hand digging around some of those and keeping the trees and removing the berm. So it's going to be a little bit on a case-by-case basis, but our overall goal is to remove that berm and open up those views to the creek. And the next issue we have is noise. You've all driven the expressway and been on the existing trail. It's pretty high speeds there. So we know that some type of barrier is needed. We heard that from everyone that we spoke with, that both to reduce the noise and provide safety for moving cars, we want to provide some kind of barrier. So we propose moving forward that we show, since we're doing 3 alternatives, we have an opportunity to show 3 different approaches and then get more feedback. So we propose to show one alternative that has a half wall, half soil berm approach. That would be kind of an efficient use of using soil to achieve our goals. And then secondly would be a typical CMU sound wall on the second alternative, and that would take a little less space than the soil berm approach. So that would be the advantage to that one. And then thirdly, we would provide an option that shows a sound wall that also has some transparent portions to offer visibility. So we'll hear what the public thinks about those 3, and we'll see what trade-offs are created by the different costs of the 3 alternatives too. Everyone wants everything, but if we save a little money on the sound wall, that's more for recreation. So there's always trade-offs that exist. Next topic was the restroom. There's a lot of interest in that, and then also some concerns over visibility and the remote situation. So we have an idea of how to tackle that in 3 different ways. One alternative, we propose showing it within the new site. One alternative, we propose showing it at Sterling Barnhart, which would be across the pedestrian bridge and offers a little bit easier access for maintenance and also visibility. And then we're going to show one alternative without the restroom as well to gather feedback on that. And again, that would be a trade-off situation, like how important is the restroom to the community and what else do you get if you don't have to pay for that restroom? So these are all things we'll find out. And then also lighting was a kind of a mixed review on lighting in terms of comments. A lot of people want it for safety. The current trail does not include lighting, and wildlife considerations would make us lean towards not having lighting. So I think we're going to need to do a balanced approach to this and probably include some lighting at, for instance, the restroom, but locate any lighting further from the creek. And then lastly, our last topic is recreation features, the one we're most excited about, the things that the community is going to get excited about. And we're expecting that all of the 3 alternatives will have this kind of baseline level of the community's top priorities. That would be like what Myrna mentioned, shade, seating, and paths, some play and fitness, and an emphasis on nature and education features. And then beyond that, each concept will provide some unique features and a unique emphasis so that in the next round of feedback, we can really identify the community's priorities and really kind of zero in on one plan that we're going to move forward with. And also not to forget that with each scheme, we'll kind of circle back and make sure that each scheme provides opportunities for each age group in each concept. We don't want to make something that's only good for the small kids. We want to also address the teens and the elderly, the adults. So it's a place that the whole community can come together at. And that's it. We tried to condense everything so that we could make sure we hear all of your comments. We're really excited to move this project forward and hear what you think. As we discuss, I'm happy to pull up other slides that I moved through too quickly. So just let me know if you want me to go back. And I will pass it to Mayor Paul to start the discussion.
Jan, thank you so much. And it's just been wonderful seeing this space being activated and moved forward. Thank you to your colleague Myra, and we're also very grateful, of course, to our city staffer Lisa for taking on this project. And it's just a wonderful thing to see this space moving forward for that part of our city. So as we normally do, we'll go to our members of the public and take comment. I do see 2 hands raised in Zoom right now. They are from Jill Halloran and from Jennifer. And now we have Ronnie Fisher as well as Lisa Warren. And so with regard to the public comment, everyone will have 3 minutes each. And please have your hand raised in Zoom before the first person is done speaking. You have 2 other methods of being able to give public comment at a Cupertino council meeting. And if you're live here, you have to fill out a blue card. Please do that within the time that the first person is speaking. And then you can also email our city clerk. That's one word, cityclerk@cupertino.org. within that first speaker's time of speaking. And so again, we'll go to Jill as our first speaker. Welcome, Jill.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll just be very, very brief. I'm pleased to hear the considerations that you're giving with as far as, I know it's all delicate balance of safety, recreation, and so on. But I appreciate the considerations about the lighting, and I'm pleased to hear that you'll be doing minimal lighting. Because of course, as you know, lighting does disturb wildlife, and there's just so much light in this area, and I'm hoping that the lighting will be at a minimum. And I'm pleased about so many of the things I heard. I just want to emphasize that adding to the tree canopy is really important in many, many different ways. It not only supports wildlife habitat, it casts shade and it retains carbon, so that's good for the climate. I'd also like to put my support forth for putting the bike trail a little far from the creek to keep it away from the quieter areas of the creek, and including native trees and plants and grasses in the design. And that's pretty much all I had to say, so I can turn it over to someone else now. Thank you very much, so someone else can speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. And our remaining speakers on Zoom are Jennifer, Ronnie Fisher, Lisa Warren, and Susan Moore. Next we have Jennifer. Welcome, Jennifer. And I'm going to go ahead and push the allow to talk button here for Jennifer again. I think we
here I was babbling along. I was thanking the consultant and Darcy and everyone's just been a joy to work with. Absolutely professional. The consultants have done a fantastic job. Public Works. They understand the sensitivity of this and how much the area has looked forward to having additional parkland. And I'm really, really pleased with how this has rolled along. I just had a few comments. I'm just blown away by the number of oak trees in that creek. It's just insane. There must be stuff that's 200 to 300 years old. It's just like nirvana. Anyway, I just want to have just a couple of comments. I think that's wonderful about having seating and riparian corridor, and yes, the bike lane, put it near Lawrence. I think that will be easier for folks who are cycling through. I just wanted to make a comment. Actually, let me put my glasses on. I have you guys on TV and in Zoom land. Okay, I have 2 minutes. All right, I'll talk real fast. So yes, I think keeping lighting, I'm low, whatever. One of my main concerns is making sure that people feel safe in this area, and that would mean, like there are things that happen in this area, and I think it's a good idea to possibly have an emergency phone there. We have them at San Jose State, where people could call on them at night if something happened. I'm just throwing that out there. In terms of, I really like your ideas about the sound wall. My husband threw in that, remember, anything that goes up will be tagged. Graffiti and tagging have been prolific in this area, and we need to remember that. And if you guys can have some eyes from Lawrence traffic going by, looking at what's going on in the park, it helps in terms that if somebody sees something going on, they can report it. And then I'll just mention, the part about, I love dogs. We had dogs growing up. We had German Shepherd and a Chihuahua, etc. The only thing I will say is people need to remember we do have coyotes in our area. My mother-in-law had heard on next door around the corner from her house, there were 4 coyote family that followed people at midnight walking a dog at Hyde and Miller and Bollinger. This was on next door. But I think keeping dogs on leash is a much better idea because we may lose little dogs, whatever. We won't go there. And also, we are trying very hard to make sure that this property was owned by the Graves family in the 1800s, and we're trying to save the Graves family home, which is across Saratoga at Mitzi.
15 seconds.
I saw a picture of this land of the orchard that had been in there before Caltrans came in. And I think it was a cherry orchard, and maybe we could have a tiny area that represented the history of the property and have some cherry trees.
Jennifer, thank you very much. And thank you for that bit of history at the end. Next, we have Ronnie Fisher. Welcome, Ronnie.
Thank you. I'm actually a resident of Sunnyvale, but I live 5 miles north on Lawrence, just off of Lawrence. And I want to thank you so much for all your thoughtful work. I like your plan to minimize lighting. It's so important for insects and birds. And I really appreciate that because I don't see that sensitivity around my house here. I like the emphasis on native plants, which is so crucial to the insect population. The caterpillars have to have these certain plants with which they've evolved. And finally, I'm just echoing what Jill said to the plan to keep the bike path away from the stream. So thank you. I approve, and that's all.
Thank you very, very much, Ronnie. And our next speaker is Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. I know this project has been a long time in the coming, and it's really exciting to see it actually looking like it's going to happen. So I thank everyone in the past who has had anything to do with it that may no longer be around or involved. And I thank everybody here. And I, for one, I'm going to say first, I want the name of the park changed. And I've talked about that before. I don't know if that's being discussed, but if it is, I'd like to know. Great, I agree. These consultants, my first exposure to some of them in person was at the open house at the site when there were the stations, and everyone there was able to able to answer questions. I listened to other people's questions, my own questions. They knew what they were talking about. They added to the conversation. They weren't robots. It was a really nice experience. And it sounds like that's how they work. So I hope that's the case, because if so, we're on our way to something good. I agree with minimizing the lighting. Any addition or cleanup of the existing tree canopy is great. healthy cleanup. The bike path should definitely be closer to the road, in my opinion. I liked Jennifer's idea of an emergency phone, actually, which I had never thought of myself. And I do remember from one of the meetings, I believe I've been at all of them, there was discussion about further soil testing, and I don't know if that's been done, but I did hear the comment that the only thing to be removed is chunks of concrete, and I don't know if that was based on the first studies or any further studying of the soil, so that would be good to know. Wall and berms, my preference is they be mixed in style, whether, and there was an image of a transparent with some either colored etching or something tree-like looking, or which is appealing to me. I do think they should be mixed up and not be a solid wall or a solid berm, or, you know, if it's a solid wall, then see-through and not see-through, that kind of thing. I think actually dirt partial berms would help with the sound more than just a wall, depending on the wall. So I know there's more discussion to be made around that, but that's just what I'm thinking. And I think that's it, except for I was also pleased by the number of people that participated in some of these info gathering events. And it seemed like when you were talking to people in a group, even if they had different ideas, they were very open and giving feedback. There wasn't a nastiness in the bunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And our next speaker is Susan Moore. Welcome, Susan.
Just short. Oh, I'm so excited about this. I mean, it's just amazing what's happened. And anyway, thank you, City Council and staff and consultants. But as a senior, as a retired registered nurse, as a former Girl Scout, my priorities would be a restroom. It's kind of important for some of us. It's also something like Jollyman with a few items that are accessible to all. I think this is a golden opportunity to put something in there, and maybe not a whole park, but just a few items that would be really great. And the wall, I mean, you can make a varied wall. I mean, you can have a wall with vines. You can have different types of structure, different types of masonry, whatever. I mean, a wall could be very exciting. You know, we often walk the trail from Shoreline through Mountain View and the Stevens Creek Trail, and it's next to freeways. You go over them and under them, and you would think, I want to go over a freeway, but it's exciting. It actually is really exciting, and it's a different perspective, you know, and I really enjoy it. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Susan. And Madam City Clerk, are there any members of the public that have turned in a blue card or emailed you during the time allocated for contacting you for having you read up to 3 minutes of their email comment into the record?
Yes, Mayor, I did receive 2 emails during the public comment period.
Okay, very good.
First one is from Caitlin Wong. Dear Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council, I am so happy that we will have a new park on the east side of Cupertino near my house. Thank you, Mayor Paul, for being the driving force to get this done. The new park should be named Darcy Paul Park for hopefully not for another 50 years or so, but hopefully not for another 50 years or so. I hope that there can be a fenced-in area for off-leash dogs as part of the new park. I currently take my golden retrievers all the way across town to the Jollyman Park off-leash dog area, or drive even further to Sunnyvale. We need an off-leash dog area on the east side of town. I know that it will take many years to develop this park, but I plan to be in Cupertino for a long time. A big thank you to the City Council for all you do to make Cupertino a wonderful place to live. You have a tough job and receive a lot of unfair attacks from special interest groups and the media, but you persevere. Keep up the great work. Caitlin Wong, Cupertino resident. And I have one more from EAC Chair Annie Yang. Good evening, Mayor Paul and council members. My name is Annie Yang, and I'm the chair of the Environmental Action Committee of the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. I am also a Cupertino resident. I am really glad that the city has decided to develop this site as a park. I would love to see the area restored to some of the natural habitat it once was to bring back some healthy biodiversity. As mentioned in the environmental summary report, the site is adjacent to Saratoga Creek, an important wildlife corridor that runs through the largely developed areas that lack natural space for resident and migratory species to shelter, forage, and breed. In fact, one California species of special concern has been identified as using the area now. Once the park is developed, I am sure more species, special status or otherwise, will also be found in the park. Therefore, in order to protect the ecosystem and allow for safe recreation, I encourage 3 things. Number 1, please plant all native trees and plants appropriate to the riparian habitat of Saratoga Creek. Please also protect the existing native trees that are there. Number 2, put trails as far away from the creek as possible. I've walked on trails in South Bay that are too close to the water, and you can see inevitable bits of trash and trampling by humans or pets along the banks. Finally, please do not put artificial lighting at the park. The city council members of the public and environmental experts have all discussed here previously the dangers of artificial light at night to birds, insects, and the ecosystem, especially in sensitive areas such as the location of this park. Again, I am looking forward to seeing healthy natural habitat thrive in Lawrence-Mitty Park. Thank you, Annie Yang.
Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk, and we'll bring it back to council. On a time check, I see we're at 6:06. We have the regular meeting starting at 6:45, and so I guess the allocation can be approximately 5 minutes for each council member if we want to go through a round of questions and comments. And so I'll go by either an indication on the dais or a show of hands on Zoom. Last time I started on Zoom, so I don't see any of our colleagues with their hands up, but Councilmember Moore was indicating, and so let's go ahead and move to Councilmember Moore. And again, roughly 5 minutes each, and I won't be keeping time, but I'll try to regulate the fairness of the allocations. Councilmember Moore, take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Paul. And that was a wonderful report. I enjoyed reading it very much. I believe the member of the Audubon Society was referring to the dusky-footed wood rat. And I did not notice the middens when I went out. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but apparently there's 11 there on the site. I'd like to know a little bit about what they look like, so in case we're out again, we were able to spot them. I agree with a lot of the comments that I heard from the public. Was wondering if we're able to do the bioretention of some of the stormwater, if there's some way in the design to have some help for the runoff coming from Lawrence Expressway. That was something that we had discussed a few years ago on the Planning Commission as a potential project. Let's see. I was wondering about the California Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. This is really a question for our staff and whether or not this is something that we have to apply to all of our projects. Just kind of in general, I'm curious about that. I would like to see us supporting large California native trees. I think with the space that we have, and people are cutting down some of these very large trees on their lots. And if because of the size of the space, that might be an excellent opportunity to do so. I would like the city or our consultant to contact perhaps and connect with San Jose regarding their Saratoga Creek Park, because it is on the east side of Lawrence Expressway, and it does have a sound wall all along the perimeter, and I'd like to know what the kind of experiences they've had with regards to safety inside of the park, because there's the lack of visibility, or maybe there's other ways that the Sheriff's Department's able to look at that park. So I'd like to know how it's going for them and what the difference is there. I'm concerned about having trash pickup and taking care of a restroom there and how that's going to work with regards to access. And we don't want to encourage people to be leaving trash and picnic items if that's going to become a hassle. So I do really appreciate the suggestion of having a restroom on the Sterling Barnhart site, but that might, because it's very small, become problematic for the neighbors living around that area. So I want to be very mindful to the people who are going to be impacted by that, and if it's going to be attracting more travel there, want to be careful with that, and would like to see the support of pollinators in particular. Native plants would be wonderful. Going back to the contamination, my ballpark figure was about $300,000 to $500,000 for the lead soil removal, so I'd like to have that number checked. And I am interested in the cap suggestion, but if there is some will to have a community garden, then I think we might want to look at the removal, which is going to increase the cost. So I think I'd like to hear a little bit more about that as well. So I have a few questions in there, and I'm really excited about this moving forward. And the report's excellent, so keep up the good work.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. And let me go to our staff or consultants at this point. Councilmember Moore still has about a minute or so in our allocation. Does anyone want to speak to any of the comments or questions posed by Councilmember Moore on this? So, well, maybe the flow of the conversation will kind of bring that out. But I do have other council members that have their hands raised at this point. So let me go to Vice Mayor Chow, followed by Councilmember Wei. So Vice Mayor Chow, welcome.
Hello. Yeah. First, I'd like to thank the staff and consultant for a wonderful staff report. I especially appreciate the links to past the trail master plan, and then links to our website. And great information provided and great summary report. Just one comment that the summary report did not include the appendices. So it would be great if it could be included. I understand you provided the fact sheet to the visitors and the other materials for the people. I think it's great that you provided a lot of information for people to comment on. And so I think it's a really good idea to have emergency phone along the trail. And in terms of restrooms, I wonder if we could know what restrooms are there at the existing trailhead. There are parks around, so that we know where are the existing restrooms, how far they are from the trailhead. That would be helpful. And for the sound wall, I actually recently walked the trail, the Stevens Creek Trail from Mountain View for about 2 hours. And it has all kinds of sound wall between no sound wall. It was really noisy when there is only chain link fence. And with sound wall, it helps, but still quite noisy. Noise only comes down when there is a big distance for the trail from the expressway. But I think that's not an option for us here. We do want the creek to be closer to Lawrence, as we want that to be away from creek. Then good sound wall is an option. But then I also am concerned because it's a very narrow trail. If it's a concrete sound wall, how safe it is in case something happens, there is no escape. And right now, I think most of the lanes doesn't have any sound wall. So at least it's transparent, it's visible from Lawrence. So there is plus and minus. So I wish to see options for that. And also, I think besides the trail, I would like to also provide some ideas for the open space, the park that we have. I don't know if anyone has mentioned, but I thought this might be a good place for a skate park. And Cupertino right now doesn't have any place for skate or BMX bikes, except there is one in San Jose Calabasas Park. And then I looked for pictures where there is skate park, but in nature setting. So this is one example that you can have some kind of skating around, but then it's all under tree canopy. So the existing open space doesn't have a lot of trees, but we could potentially plant more trees so that it's really a skate park under trees. And this is another example. It's mostly dirt, but they could be under a canopy of trees. And it doesn't have to be concrete. It could be just dirt tracks. And this is another example where it's not really dirt, but then it's some thing that add the curves for practice. So that's another example. So these are some other example of potential ramps. Because I understand this is a park where we can avoid that. It's going to be noisy. And BMX park, skate park is going to be noisy. People usually are concerned of noise from skate park. And so why not put them right next to Lawrence? And then maybe the seniors can have a sitting area and watch the kids play on their skateboard. So maybe there is a mix that we could have. So I think we have plenty of other nature area that people can quietly sit and enjoy nature. But this might not be that place because it's really not quiet. So maybe let's take advantage of what it offers, just an option. Yeah, okay, bye. That's all.
Great, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. And I will go on to Councilmember Wei, who did have her hand raised, I think, before. Councilmember Wei, did you want to provide comments or questions at this time?
Sure, thank you, Mayor Paul. So I too like to thank the staff and the consultant for a good job, and all for the participants that put their opinions. Now that we know more about this park, the shortcomings and also the opportunities. So I do believe whatever we decide, or the consultant is going to bring 2 or 3 proposals, that it's important for the neighborhood to respond. Because this is still neighborhood park, and I think we have to recognize parking, access, safety, noise can be an issue for the neighborhood. So I do think that we need to do extensive outreach to the neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, so that they are aware what's happening, and their opinions and their comfort level can be addressed. So that's my major concern. And the other concern is, I think everybody recognizes it, but I think safety is a major concern, that access, if there's emergency, how do you access for emergency people to go in? So I think that's in the design that needs to be really, really carefully considered. And as to plans, we are in an extreme drought season, and I think drought is not going to go away. So if during design, we need to keep in mind, yes, we love greens, we love big trees, but how are we going to adhere to Valley Water's suggestions and recommendations, like Councilmember Kitty Moore said, how we're going to adjust, adhere to strict water conservation plans. I think that's a major component too. This is a great place if we can make it a great place, but with everybody's input. And I especially care about what the neighborhood thinks about what's going to come up. So thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Councilmember Wei. And next we have Councilmember Willie.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, I'll say, great presentation. I think we've all been so anxious for so long about moving this along. And so I think my comments would start off with something similar to what I was just talking about, and that is, what's the roadmap look like? I mean, I think for us and for the residents, 6 months, 12 months, I mean, tonight was a great update. The a lot of the items, issues, concerns, the outreach, things of that nature. But from a roadmap standpoint, where do you think we're going to be in 6 months and in a year? When do we think we'll actually have some space that's available that we could start taking down the fence that keeps the residents out of this area? So I would hope that you could give us an idea of that roadmap, just a rough one tonight. That being said, I think most of the comments that I have already been shared. I'll just toss out a couple. So safety, yes. I'm kind of very interested in the possibility that there's going to be some crime and how that would be addressed. This is a pretty unique location, which is pretty isolated. And so maybe in the next update, you could share with us how safety and crime would be addressed. How will the Sheriff's Department be able to patrol this, things of that nature. The berms and sound walls, I definitely like the concept of the berms. I think I've mentioned previously at times about the John Morgan Park, which is not far away from this. Let me share the screen. And is my screen up?
It is, yes.
So this is John Morgan Park. That is Montague Expressway, San Thomas Expressway, such that here it is, right down, I don't know if you can see my mouse there or not, but that is the expressway, and they're using berms and trees to kind of protect and provide sound isolation. And so once again, some of these, what can we learn from John Morgan Park, I guess, both safety and the berm features. And so I'll leave that at that, stop sharing. And the last important comment, thank you, Mayor Paul, for being a champion of this. I would think that had you not been that champion, this would not be where it is today. And I'd be disappointed if it never happened, but I don't think it would have been anywhere close to where it is today. So thank you very much, and hopefully we can get some idea on future updates via a roadmap. So leave it with that. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. And let me go ahead and thank you for your last comment. I really appreciate it. And let me thank the member of the public, Caitlin Wong, who mentioned, I think in 50 years, maybe naming it after me. And I appreciate the sentiment there. I hope I live to 96 or older as well. But I think it also kind of keeps me motivated to keep contributing to the community for a good long time. But in any event, I did have a few follow-up questions. So let me ask those. And with regard to just overall the work done, I just want to say from the outset that it's been tremendous. MIG has a significant history with the city of Cupertino. My first exposure was with the Blackberry Farm Corridor Master Plan. And then, of course, we ended up using MIG for the citywide master plan, which kind of came about as a result of a lot of the public discussions on that. But I think, personally, I think this is kind of the crown jewel of your work insofar as I've seen it over the course of the last 10 years, which has all been very good. But this is an amazing process that you're kicking off for us. I'm very grateful to our city staff for coordinating. And, it looks like this is going to be a really good regional connector in addition to a much needed green space and park space that will be available on the eastern side of Cupertino. So let me ask my questions here, kind of dovetailing off of a couple of comments that have been made. What is the timetable that we're looking at here? And I realize that it's kind of difficult given this sort of overarching large project, fairly significant amount of space. But to those general questions, are we looking at an opening perhaps years down the line, or is it kind of more nebulous at this point. What kind of overall timetable are we looking at? And anyone feel free just to chime in and answer, because I'll just shoot off a few questions here.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll start with this one, and I think Lisa can support me on the question. So big picture, we're looking to narrow this down to a final design by the end of the calendar year. So the big efforts that gets us there is lots of public outreach. We heard that in the council comments. So we'll continue that, what I would call a robust effort at community outreach to make sure that we have that engagement.
Okay.
And towards the end of the year, we should be nailed down with the idea of what the design option is that we want to move forward. That would lead us into sort of the middle of next calendar year of having CEQA clearance. And once we have CEQA clearance, we're able to move towards construction. We are likely to have some permitting needs with this project, with the creek being present. So that's going to add a little bit of time there when we're working with state organizations. Mm-hmm. But that will be part of the process as well. So I would say in the late fall or of next year, we should be looking towards construction in that time frame. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, that might be on the aggressive side, but that's a good target for us, I think.
I think that's a pretty good target, and I'll just add the caveats in there and right off of what Matt has said. Jurisdictional issues, some of the comments that were made associated with sort of utilizing, for example, the stormwater runoff from Lawrence-Mitty. That's a whole different. It's a whole different process to negotiate with jurisdictions, which tend to add time to a project. So some of the timing is going to be very much based on the features that are included in the designs.
Got it. Well, I really appreciate that. So let me do this here. I have a couple of other questions. Let me sort of pick and choose as to which one, in the interest of time. We conducted a cleanup of this area in terms of a volunteer group of people in the last couple of months. In your kind of study of this space, it's a couple of acres up there in the triangular parcel, but of course, I believe the two parcels that we annexed from San Jose comprise a total of 7 acres. Do you have any thoughts on cleanup and how we can help as a community prepare the space and perhaps maintain the space? Were there, kind of investigations into that aspect of the overall plan here, because I'm sure that we would be very happy. And talking about activating the neighbors, we actually ended up getting a person just randomly walking in our cleanup, a 70-something-year-old gentleman who lived literally right across the creek, and he helped us for 3 hours clean up the space. So I know that there's a lot of active interest in the direct neighborhood. But in terms of that, is there any recommendation as to how to proceed? Because otherwise, we might just say, hey, let's have another cleanup day, and kind of think about it in terms of just trying to support it tangentially. But if there's anything that we can actively do to work together on it, happy to do so.
So I think the last cleanup that you orchestrated was amazingly successful, and you all pulled out much more than we thought was ever going to be possible in that site in that short amount of time. We do think that this will be a great opportunity, a great location for the next, the annual creek cleanup. And I think we have another one coming up. Fall timeline, as I recall, typically we would look at Calabasas. There's some work going on there with Valley Water. So we would want an alternate location, and this might be that ideal location. I think that might be in September sometime. Okay. So we would focus there. So yes, I think the answer to your question is another cleanup at this site is probably inevitable, and something that we would engage the community. I think is a great, as you led with, it's a great opportunity to build the community interest in the project.
Okay, wonderful. And then finally, the only comment I'll make on this is, I think if you're looking at the northern end of it, it probably is a really good site for future connectivity. So as we're thinking about how to design out the space, I hope that there is some design with an eye in mind on opportunities in the future, right? So for example, Measure B funding might come and visit upon the Highway 280, Lawrence Expressway / Stevens Creek Boulevard, that whole kind of connectivity triangle in which some infill space has been used to make office buildings, for instance. So there are some challenges, of course, but just to be able to say, hey, we're extending the Saratoga Creek north, and that whole kind of triangular, meeting of three different major thoroughfares might be able to present us with an opportunity in the future to connect that entire region of the area to, the other part of the South Bay. So I'm not saying that this is just going to be turning into a connector, of course, but I think if we do it thoughtfully, especially with something like Vice Mayor Chow's suggestion of the skate park, kind of synergized with Canopy and possibly, thinking thoughtfully about the spaces that we could provide for people such as seniors to visit, just all of these various aspects. I'm so pleased, and thank you so very much for thinking through, obviously, very thoroughly the various aspects here. It's not an easy space. It's not an easy space at all, but it's just such a pleasure to look at this presentation and to read the materials and realize that finally, after decades, I can't take the credit for this, certainly not the sum totality of it. After decades of work from the community and a lot of appetite, we're, really proving that the east side of Cupertino can have a space like this and not compromise any of the services on any other parts of the city. And so, in fact, if you look at it, our services and spaces have been enhanced all the way across the board. So thank you so much for being that critical element of showing that can be done. And a lot of work, of course, and we'll keep on doing that work. I do see that Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Willie still have their hands up. So it looks like Councilmember Willie, that was just artifactual. Vice Mayor Chow, did you have any follow-up before we convene to our break before the regular session? And I do.
Yeah.
I see Director Morley has a hand up as well. So perhaps it makes sense to go Director Morley before Vice Mayor Chow. So Vice Mayor, just one moment, and Director Morley, did you have?
Mayor, I just wanted an opportunity right before we wrap to summarize what I heard from the council, so that we acknowledge some of the comments that we heard tonight. So if
okay, sounds perfect.
I would like comments first.
Okay, absolutely. Just one moment, one speaker at a time thing. So let me do this. I neglected to look to my left, so thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. So Vice Mayor Chow, why don't you take a couple minutes? Councilmember Moore, you take a couple minutes, and then we'll have a wrap up from Director Morley. So okay. Vice Mayor Chow.
Thank you. First, echo Councilmember Willie's comments. I think without Mayor Paul keep pushing, and this would not be possible. There were a lot of obstacles, and the staff really helped to make this happen. And two questions. First, the one comment that was brought up by one of the public is the history of cherry trees. I wasn't sure what's that, but if we could include some kind of history along the trail, maybe of native trees or cherry trees, that would be nice. And the second, when we did the creek cleanup, I find that if we were walking in the creek bed, there was no noise. It was totally enjoyable. And so how feasible it is or viable to be able to open the creek bed to be accessible to visitors, even when during the dry season when there were no water or when there were water, that could be accessible without disturbing the wildlife, of course. So that if that could be explored, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Vice Mayor Chow. And next we have Councilmember Moore.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Paul. So there was a statement in the report talking about protected trees having either a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 replacement ratio, and I wasn't really clear on what that meant. I do want to see that the Valley Oak number 172 is saved. I hope you're able to do that, and because you have so many respondents that I really hope that the prioritization which the residents and the surrounding community provided, that's kept intact. So bringing that up, item 1 was nature play, then things to climb, and then fitness equipment area or a course. So I hope that you maintain the integrity of the replies which you got. So if someone could respond to about the protected trees, the 1-to-1 or the 2-to-1 ratio, I'd love to hear it. And I think it's great. I'm hoping that you do do replace them and get as tall a canopy as possible. I think it'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore, and either Director Morley or someone else from staff or a consultant to answer the question about the 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 tree ratio.
Yeah, Jen, would you like to help us with that?
Sure. I don't have it in my brain exactly which trees are 1-to-1 and 2-to-1, but it does depend on where they are. So if they're in the riparian corridor, it requires a greater replacement ratio. So it kind of depends where you take them out and if they're native heritage trees. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis, and we're definitely planning to remove as few as possible, and then if we do, obviously follow the ratios of replacement.
Got it. Thanks so much. Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised just for one final comment so we can kind of have a timely transition to our regular meeting.
Sure. Thank you. When would we be making input regarding, for instance, if we were to want brightly colored playground equipment, which isn't naturalistic looking, versus naturalistic, nature-colored items in the park? Would this be the time to make that request? Because I would be asking for the naturalistic approach. When would we put that in?
I think you can make those comments anytime, but Lisa, you want to give us a timeline on where in the process that makes most sense?
Well, I believe that where that makes the most sense is once we put together our 3 alternatives. And with those alternatives, there'll be different types of play equipment available for different age groups. And those comments can be made at that time, and that will assist us in moving on to the next step and sort of fine-tuning a final conceptual design.
Great, thank you very much. And let's take it to Director Morley to wrap it up.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for the input. I think this was super productive for staff and for the consultant team. We heard a lot of good ideas, and it's really going to help us focus in the next design phase. Some of the things that I heard, sort of rolling them into big topics. A little bit about operations, including crime. How do we maintain the space? How do we deal with trash and restrooms, things like that. Big conversation on vegetation and what that looks like, native trees, pollinators, that kind of direction. So we'll pay special attention to what we're doing on the landscaping. We heard quite a bit about park design and amenities, things like bike and skate facilities, the sound wall and berms, the desire to address stormwater. So those are big elements there. Also nature, incorporating nature and fitness sort of from a higher level. And we had some great examples of other parks that we should key in along the way. And I think that'll be helpful for us to be able to take a look. So we appreciate that additional information and insight from the council. So with that, I think that concludes sort of my wrap up. We'll continue, like I said, to do the outreach, and the project team is on this one. We look forward to bringing you the next report in a few months.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, once again with the team. And then on a personal note, I roll off of our city council in December, on December 6th. Not that anyone's counting the days, but if it actually happens to be that the visitation is after that, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks for moving this forward to a point where it really does look like we're going to have an amazing space right on the border of Cupertino on the eastern side. And you've filled one of the South Bay mayors with a lot of joy and gratitude in their heart. So we will see you all in approximately 7 minutes. We adjourn the special meeting. Thank you very much. We'll see you at 6:45 for the regular meeting. Meeting adjourned.